Hi, my name is Heather Toll, and I am going to be discussing network security management fundamentals. In this, you will learn what is network security, common types of network attacks, vulnerabilities, mitigation techniques, device and network hardening, types of firewalls, and best practices. With how fast technology advances, people are learning and developing more sophisticated techniques to target and attack systems. Individuals and the large organizations are all impacted, so network security is imperative. Just the very nature of networking makes networks vulnerable to attacks. Network security is made up of the hardware, software, policies, and procedures designed to defend against both internal and external threats to a company's computer systems. It provides a secure platform for computers, users, and programs to perform their permitted critical functions within a secure environment. So what are some common vulnerabilities? Vulnerabilities is potential weaknesses in an infrastructure that a threat might exploit. This can fall into three categories: hardware-based, software-based, and human-based. If these weaknesses are exploited, it could result in a compromised network and security breach. So what are some common vulnerability areas? There's unnecessary running services, unpatched legacy systems, unencrypted channels, clear text credentials, authentication or authorization. So let's get into a few of these. Unnecessary running services. Many computer break-ins are a result of people taking advantage of security holes or problems within programs. A typical system running an OS will have a large number of important programs running in the background. However, many of these services are not necessarily required. They do a lot of the behind-the-scenes work that users really don't need to see. So it's important for a tech to familiarize themselves with these so they can know what needs to be turned off versus what has to continue to run. This will help close any unused TCP or UDP ports. Unpatched or legacy systems. This includes operating systems, software, and firmware. If these are kept up to date or are no longer supported by the OS maker, or if these are not kept up to date or no longer supported by the OS maker, then they are just a target waiting to be attacked. This might be something like Windows 7. Unencrypted channels. Thanks to open internet, it is common to have access and use secure protocols or secure channels. This might include VPNs, SSL, or TLS, and SSH. Users and techs want to stay clear of using Telnet and HTTP. Instead, one might want to use HTTPS, which is more secure. They'll also want to avoid insecure remote desktops like VNC. While VPN is recommended, it also comes with its own security risks, so it needs to be configured correctly. So getting to know the different threats. To understand why network security is important, one must understand the different threats that are out there. Threats can come from internal and external sources. Malware is probably one of the most common and biggest threats. Malware defines any program or code that's designed to do something on a system or network that you don't want done. Malware comes in a variety of guises, including viruses, worms, Trojan horses, keylogger, and rootkit. So let's get into a few of these. Viruses. A virus is a code or a program that was written to alter a way a computer operates. It attaches itself to a legitimate program or document and then waits until that program or document is ran. A virus has two jobs: to replicate and to activate. Once it is activated, then it's game on to start replicating. It can infect other computers by attaching itself to emails. Viruses do need a human to be able to continue to spread. Without interaction, then that virus won't be able to continue to spread. Worms, these are very similar to viruses, however they don't need human interaction to be able to spread, nor do they need to attach themselves to a program. A worm will immediately start sending copies of itself to other computers on a network. And with viruses, one common way that they can infect computers is by someone putting them on a USB stick, and then a user picks it up and sticks it in their computer. So you definitely don't want to be clicking on links or putting any foreign objects into your computer. A Trojan horse, I'm sure this is something that we're all familiar with. A Trojan horse is a piece of malware that looks or pretends to do one thing while at the same time doing something malicious. They can hide as emails, games, downloads, the list goes on. Once it infects a computer into a server, then it can open a TCP or UDP port so a remote user can control that infected computer. This can be used to capture keystrokes, passwords, files, credit card info, and much more. These don't replicate though like viruses or worms. A rootkit, thanks to modern day technology, it's become a lot harder for viruses and Trojan horses to hide thanks to anti-malware programs. A rootkit takes advantage of very low level operations system functions to hide itself from most anti-malware tools. The user is then able to gain access without being detected. Once one can recognize threats and vulnerabilities, it's time to apply security hardware, software, and processes to your networks to prevent these things. This is called hardening the network. There are three aspects, which include physical security, network security, and host security. The ultimate goal is to eliminate as many risks and threats to a computer as necessary. Physical security means keeping the server room from being accessible from those who are not authorized. Without proper physical security, it can lead to property theft, data loss due to natural damage or physical access, and property destruction by accident or sabotage. It's best to keep networks, servers accessible only to those who have authorization and to keep track of that personnel as well. Network security. One will want to protect the network from malicious, suspicious, or potential threats that might connect to or access to the network. This can include user account control, edge devices, guest networks, and quarantine networks. Depending on the size of a company, it may be necessary to provide connection to the internet for clients and visitors. A guest network can contain or allow access to any resource that management deems acceptable to be used by a non-secure host that attaches to the network. Device hardening is also an important aspect of network security. Proper network hardening needs to include this, and this will apply to switches, routers, and network appliances. One would want to start with changing the default username and password on devices. Make sure that those devices are staying up to date, and use secure protocols, which is something we will discuss later, along with disabling any unused ports. You'll also want to secure access to devices and systems. This will include user authentication for network devices and securing network data with encryption and authentication. Authentication is a requirement when one wants to control access to network elements. Authentication has two aspects: access authentication and functional authorization. Access gives control to whether or not a certain user has any type of access, to the device in question, whether that's a computer or a router, while authorization gives the user certain rights. This will dictate what they're able to do on that computer, what changes can be made. It's common in corporate networks that users can't download any sort of programs without permission first. You also want to secure network data with encryption and authentication. In some cases, it might be important to be concerned about disclosing information that is exchanged between network elements, computers, or systems. To avoid data disclosures over a network, encryption methods must be employed that make the transmitted data unreadable to someone who might somehow capture that data as it traverses the network. Encryption of data is usually done by the combination of plaintext data with a secret key using a particular encryption algorithm. This might include 3DES, AES, MD5, and so on. The output is then in ciphertext. So unless someone or a computer has that key, then it can't be changed from ciphertext to plaintext. There are other methods to being able to encrypt data, but these are some of the most common ones. We also need to employ secure protocols. Protocols play a vital role in securing the network. It's very essential for a tech to understand and know some of the secure protocols. Various techniques and processes are involved in these protocols to secure the network data from any illegitimate attempt to review or extract the actual content of data. These protocols include SSH, SSL/TLS, IPsec, and VPN, as I mentioned earlier. SSH, it's also known as Secure Shell Client Server Protocol. It was developed in the 1990s. It provides a secure mechanism to access computer consoles or shells remotely over unprotected or non-secure networks. The protocol provides secure methods by address user and server authentication and full encryption of all traffic exchanged between the client and server. We also have SSL/TLS protocol. SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer, and TLS stands for Transport Layer Security Protocol. They become one of the standard methods of securing web traffic and other protocols such as SMTP. TLS is the most recent version of SSL. It's been accepted as an IETF standard, while SSH never became a full IETF standard, despite being widely deployed as a draft standard. SSL is the secure protocol that protects HTTP web traffic, also known as HTTPS or HTTP Secure. SSL can also protect other non-HTTP communication. There's also IPsec protocol. This offers authentication of data, integrity, as well as privacy between two entities, manual or dynamic association of management and cryptographic keys. It's done with the help of an IETF specific key managing protocol, which is called IKE, or also known as Internet Key Exchange. We also included VPN on this list. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a protocol, however, it is something that's important to be discussed. Many companies use this for their users, especially ones that are working remotely. It stands for Virtual Private Network and is an encrypted connection over the internet from a device to a network. The encryption helps ensure that sensitive data is safely transmitted. It also prevents unauthorized people from eavesdropping on the traffic and allows the user to conduct work remotely and securely. As I said, it's widely used in corporate environments, but a lot of people who live at home also use it to make sure that their data is safe. Firewalls are also very important. Firewalls are devices or software that protect an internal network from unauthorized access by acting as a filter. The basic job of the firewall is to look at each packet and decide based on a set of rules whether it should allow that traffic to pass or block it. It will watch inbound packets coming into the network, as well as outbound packets leaving the network. Firewalls range from being fairly simple to complex. Most people who are on a network, they don't have to worry about these. As with most aspects of security, deciding what type of firewall to use will depend upon factors such as traffic levels, services needing protecting, and the complexity of the rules required. To list a few, there are host-based firewalls, network-based firewalls, next-generation firewalls, and stateful inspection. Host-based firewalls, these are also known as software firewall, and it's installed on a host that provides firewall services for just that machine. One that I'm sure everyone is familiar with is Windows Defender Firewall. This is automatically included on every version of Windows ever since the XP days, and it's definitely one of the most common types. Then we also have network-based firewalls. These are known as a hardware firewall since it's implemented in some sort of hardware appliance or built into the router. The Soho firewall is what most people will encounter as it is built into consumer-grade routers. This is the first line of defense at helping protect a network. However, it will not help if that malicious traffic originated within the actual network itself. And so that's where the software firewall is going to come into play. Then we also have next generation firewalls. This type of firewall functions at multiple layers of the OSI model to tackle traffic that no traditional firewall could filter out on its own. Different layers will filter out different things. For example, a layer 3 firewall can filter packet based on IP address, or a layer 5 firewall can filter based on port numbers. And then we still have the stateful inspection firewall. That's the last one on the list before I jump slides. These examine each packet and keeps track of whether or not that packet is part of an established TCP or other network session. This is an upgrade from stateless inspection, where the firewall looked at each packet fresh with no regards to its current state. This has an advantage as it offers a high degree of control over what content is let in or out of the network. So on the screen, I just have some best practices when it comes to making sure the network is secure. So you'll want to make sure there's firewalls at all public-private network points, continuous monitoring of the network for any suspicious behavior. Techs will want to be proactive in network scanning for any out-of-date programs or systems and just making sure that those keep up to date. Password policies are essential, especially in large companies. This might include having the password changed every 3 months. It has to be a minimum of 8 characters with special characters in there. All network hosts should lock down unneeded network ports and turn off unneeded services. All network hosts include centrally managed antivirus software. With the increase in threats to networks such as hackers, worms, and viruses, security is no longer just an option, but a requirement. Even home networks are a target. One must stay on top of ensuring the network is secure by using various tools and programs, along with keeping themselves up to date on the most current threats. So I have a little quiz here at the end. What are 2 secure protocols? What is a firewall's purpose? What is one type of malware? Why should a user not put a USB stick they found on the ground in their PC? And what can a user do on their end to keep their PC protected? So these are some resources that I used to put together this PowerPoint.